So balancing one's work and life has been an issue since the beginning of times, and only so few people have actually been able to master this whole concept of this balancing your personal life and your work life. So in this speech, I will highlight a few points like boundary management and its different styles, Greg McKeown and his method to creating a perfect work-life balance that are discussed in his book titled Essentialism, and finally I'll go over just some basic communication behaviors. So in my own terms, I believe that boundary management is a set of principles one sets in their life to try and incorporate time management. I believe everyone uses boundary management for the better or for the worse, and whether they actually know that they're using it or not. But the term boundary management is kind of an umbrella effect. It's a management style. And under this umbrella, there are two different styles. There's the segmenter and the integrator styles. And so first we'll look at the segmenter style. So a person with a high segmentation strategy has very clear boundaries. This person knows when to do their work life and when to do their personal life and never integrate the two of those things. So in Chapter 12 of Kramer and Beisel's Organizational Communication, A Lifespan Approach, published in 2017, they gave a strategy of people with the high segmentation strategy having two different types of emails. So in this example, they discussed how a person might have an email for their work life and for their personal life. So when they go home on the weekends, they're able to just check their personal email and not have to be bothered with seeing emails that have to do with their work life. And for the other strategy is known as the integrator strategy. Those people have no clear boundaries between their work life and their personal life. So those people will usually integrate those two things a lot and not know when to just focus on one or the other. So an example of that would be take a family hanging out on a weekend, going to a park, just deciding to spend the whole day just the family. And so when they're at the park, the husband sits down or the dad sits down and he opens up his phone and he sees he has an email from his boss. And he opens up that email from his boss and he decides that he needs to reply to his boss right then and there, even though it's on the weekend and he is not clocked in at work. This would then be an example of the integrator style because this husband is now integrating his work and his personal life and not having clear boundaries set for the two of them. So using and understanding clear boundary management and its styles, how you may react between work-life balance can make it easier for one to then manage their work and life more effectively. So now, leader, I have learned to aspire to be as someone by the name of Greg McKeown, who is the author of the book Essentialism, which I actually have right here. In this book, he teaches ones to determine where the highest contribution lies and then making execution of those things almost effortless. So, for example, the biggest points he makes in his book is that if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. So when I first heard this quote, what I immediately thought of is if I don't prioritize my life, somebody else will, is me thinking that if I don't end up prioritizing my life, then I think my work life will overtake it and my boss will kind of overstep their boundaries and take advantage almost of that situation. So my two biggest takeaways from this book were actually two instances where McKeown took his advice and kind of made it personal and gave some personal examples of himself and his work-life balance. So the first example would be him when he began writing this book, and he still worked his office job. So to start off with, he said this quote in his book that said, "Only once you give yourself permission to stop trying to do it all, stop saying yes to everyone, can you make your highest contribution towards the things that really matter." So when he was beginning to write this book and work his office job at the same time, he realized that he couldn't put his all into both of those things, that his efforts were then split. And so almost on a whim and just trust in himself and this book that he was writing, he decided to quit his day job, and which actually ended up working out for him because he created a New York Times bestseller. But going back to that example that I said, like once you give yourself permission to stop trying to do it all and saying yes to everyone, are you then able to make your highest contribution towards things? He decided that he could not put his highest contribution into both his work life and creating this book, so he decided that he needed to either pick one or the other. that being that book. And he ended up being able to pour like everything he had into this book, which ended up working out so amazing for him. And so another example that I have is an example that's not as broad or deep as the example I just gave, but it was an example that really stuck with me in his book. So this example would be, he was talking about in his book during one of the chapters about how him and his wife would go on lunch breaks together. And during these lunch breaks, they found the two of them just ranting about their work days and about all the horrible things that were going about their days. And he saw that both of their behaviors actually were really negative for the rest of the day after this lunch. And so the next time they had lunch together, he decided that the two of them should just not talk about anything that was going on about their days and just talk about just normal things that were happening or that they wanted to talk with one another. And so both of them actually saw positive, great results after they did that, and they saw that the rest of their work days and the whole day in general, that they're in a lot better mood than when they just kind of dwelled on what like negative things are happening during their work days. And so looking at those examples of work-life balance, I would then ascribe Greg McKeown to be someone with a high segmentation strategy, because if you look back at the example I was just talking about, once that Greg McKeown noticed that he needed a boundary set in his life, he brought it up to his wife and they immediately took action and set those boundaries to create this kind of leaving work at work and talking about kind of like your personal life at lunch with his significant other. So personally, I believe there's very little disadvantages to someone with a high segmentation strategy, because I believe that with the highest segmentation strategy, they'll then be able to effectively live their life to the fullest. So all in all, with the boundary management, I believe it highly increases your quality of overall life. Then knowing the two different types of boundary management, the segregation and integration, I believe that's a great place for one to begin when trying to understand how they kind of lie in their work-life management and how to kind of start their journey to creating these clear set boundaries for themselves. Also, I believe reading this Essentialism book would be another great start. I read this actually over the summer this year, and ever since then I've been able to actually apply it even just to my school life. You don't even have to be in a professional work setting, just be able to have basically just different aspects to your life, and you'll be able to apply this book to it. So in this speech, we also learned some personal examples that McKeown tells us that I just talked about. I believe that those are great takeaways to take away from this speech. So all in all, the boundary management is a key essential for everyone in their lives and with the issues that they have. Whether you're balancing your schoolwork, professional work, or your personal lives, it's a great tool to have when using this in one's life.